morning air was thick with smoke and the smell of burned metal. Sergeant Marcus Chen moved carefully through the tall grass, his rifle ready. Behind him, 3 other soldiers followed in a line. They had been walking for 2 hours looking for any sign of the enemy. "Sarge, I'm picking up something on the scanner," whispered Private Torres. He held up a small device that beeped softly. "Metal, lots of it," about half a mile ahead. Marcus nodded and signaled for the team to move forward. The war with the Zephyrians had been going on for 3 years now. The insect-like aliens had attacked human colonies without warning. Their ships were fast and deadly, made of some kind of crystal that could cut through human armor like paper. As they walked down into a deep valley, Marcus saw the wreckage. A Zephyrian transport ship had crashed into the rocky ground. The crystal hull was broken into thousands of pieces that sparkled in the sunlight like deadly jewels. Bodies of the enemy soldiers lay scattered around the crash site. "Looks like they've been dead for days," said Corporal Vega, kneeling next to one of the alien bodies. The Zephyrian was tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin that looked like green metal. Its large compound eyes stared at nothing. Marcus studied the crash site. The ship must have been carrying supplies or troops when it went down. He could see boxes of alien equipment scattered everywhere. Command would want them to collect anything useful for intelligence. Torres set up a perimeter. "Williams, start gathering any tech that looks important," Marcus ordered. "Vega, you're with me. Let's check the main section of the ship." They moved toward the largest piece of the wreckage. The front part of the ship was crushed against a large boulder, but the middle section was still mostly intact. Marcus climbed through a hole in the crystal wall, his boots crunching on broken pieces. Inside, the ship was dark and cold. Strange alien symbols glowed faintly on the walls. Marcus turned on his flashlight and swept it around the cramped space. More bodies lay twisted in their seats. He felt no sympathy for them. These creatures had killed thousands of humans. Then he heard it. A soft crying sound like a baby in distress. Marcus froze. Vega looked at him with confusion. What was that? The sound came again, weaker this time. It was coming from the back of the ship behind a pile of twisted metal and debris. "Could be a trap," Vega warned. "Maybe some kind of alien device." But Marcus knew the sound of a frightened child when he heard one. His sister had a baby daughter back on Earth. He had spent enough time babysitting to recognize real crying. He moved toward the sound, pushing aside pieces of metal. Behind a fallen support beam, he found something that made him stop breathing. It was a Zephyrian child, a larva no bigger than a human baby. Its skin was pale green and soft, not hard like the adults. 4 tiny arms reached up toward him. Its large eyes were filled with tears. Patches of light on its body flickered weakly like a dying flashlight. "Jesus Christ," whispered Vega. "Is that what I think it is?" The alien child made another crying sound. It was trapped under a piece of debris, and Marcus could see that one of its arms was hurt. There was purple blood on its pale skin. "We need to call this in," Vega said. She reached for her radio. "Wait." Marcus held up his hand. He stared down at the tiny creature. It looked so helpless, so afraid. "Sarge, it's one of them. It's the enemy." Marcus knew she was right. The regulations were clear. Any enemy personnel, alive or dead, were to be reported immediately. But this wasn't a soldier. This was a baby. "It's just a child," he said quietly. "It's a Zephyrian child. In a few years it'll grow up to kill humans." Marcus knelt down next to the trapped larva. Its big eyes looked at him with curiosity now instead of fear. One of its tiny hands reached toward his face. "Maybe," Marcus said, "or maybe it won't. Maybe if we show it kindness now, it'll remember that humans aren't monsters." "You're talking crazy," Vega said. "Command will have our heads if they find out we let an enemy live." Marcus carefully lifted the piece of debris off the child. The larva made a soft cooing sound and tried to grab his finger with its small hand. He could see the injury on its arm was not too serious, just a cut that needed cleaning. He opened his medical kit and took out antiseptic and bandages. The alien child watched with wide eyes as he gently cleaned the wound. It didn't try to fight or run away. It seemed to understand that he was helping. "Marcus, this is insane," Vega said. "You're giving medical aid to the enemy." "I'm helping a hurt child," Marcus replied. He wrapped the tiny arm in a small bandage. The larva made happy chirping sounds and grabbed at the white cloth with its other hands. Torres's voice crackled over the radio. "Sarge, I'm picking up incoming ships. Zephyrian, maybe 10 minutes out. Marcus looked around the crashed ship. In the corner, he spotted what he was looking for. A small escape pod built for one person. The crystal was cracked, but it still looked functional. "What are you doing?" Vega asked as Marcus picked up the alien child. "The right thing," he said. He carried the larva to the escape pod and gently placed it inside. The pod was designed for adult Zephyrians, so the child had plenty of room. Marcus activated the life support systems and set the distress beacon to broadcast on Zephyrian frequencies. The alien child looked up at him through the clear crystal window. It pressed its tiny hands against the glass and made soft sounds. For a moment, Marcus felt like he was looking at his own niece. "Sarge, we need to move now," Torres called over the radio. Marcus sealed the pod and activated the launch sequence. He watched as it shot up into the sky, its beacon flashing bright against the clouds. "What did you just do?" Vega stared at him in shock. "I sent it home," Marcus said. He shouldered his rifle and headed for the exit. "Let's go." As they ran through the tall grass toward the extraction point, Marcus could hear the sound of Zephyrian ships getting closer. He looked back once and saw alien craft circling the crash site. One of them would find the escape pod soon. "Command is going to ask questions," Vega said as they reached the pickup zone. The crash site had security cameras. "They'll see what you did." Marcus nodded. He knew there would be consequences. Helping the enemy was considered treason in wartime, but he couldn't bring himself to regret his decision. As their transport ship arrived to pick them up, Marcus thought about the tiny alien child. He wondered if it would survive. He wondered if it would remember the human who saved its life. Most of all, he wondered if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life, or if he had done something that might one day change everything. The transport lifted off, carrying them away from the valley. Behind them, Zephyrian ships searched the wreckage looking for survivors. They would find one. High Matriarch Veltar stood in the medical bay, watching her youngest offspring sleep. Kessela was alive. After 3 days of believing her child was dead, the impossible had happened. The rescue teams had found the larva in an escape pod, injured but breathing. The doctors had worked for hours to heal the small wounds. Now Kessela rested in a special chamber filled with healing mist. Her tiny chest rose and fell in the rhythm of peaceful sleep. "The child is fortunate to be alive," said Medical Officer Thexan. He was an old Zephyrian with scars from many battles. "The transport was completely destroyed. We found no other survivors." Veltar touched the glass of the healing chamber with one of her 4 hands. Her skin was dark green and hard like armor. Her compound eyes reflected the soft light from inside the chamber. "How did she survive the crash?" Veltar asked. "That is the strange part," Thexan said. He activated a display screen that showed images of Kessela's injuries. "Look at these wounds. They were treated before we found her." Veltar studied the images. She could see where someone had cleaned cuts and applied bandages. But the bandages were not Zephyrian medical supplies. "These are human materials," Thexan continued. "Primitive but effective. Someone with basic medical knowledge treated your offspring's injuries." Veltar felt her chest tighten. Humans were the enemy. For 3 years they had fought against her people with savage determination. Human soldiers showed no mercy to Zephyrian prisoners. They were supposed to be monsters who killed without thought. "Are you certain?" she asked. "I ran genetic tests on the bandages and on Kessela's skin," Thexan said. "Human DNA, human fingerprints, there is no doubt." Veltar looked at her sleeping child again. Someone had saved Kessela's life. A human soldier had found her offspring and chosen to help instead of harm. "I want to see the crash site," Veltar said. "Matriarch, the area is still dangerous. Human patrols. I want to see it now." 3 hours later, Veltar stood in the valley where Transport Helix 7 had crashed. Her guards searched through the wreckage while she examined every piece of evidence. The ship had been carrying supplies to the outer colonies when it was shot down by human fighters. The pilot had tried to make an emergency landing but failed. Everyone aboard should have died on impact. "Matriarch, we found something," called Guard Captain Zethol. He was holding a small recording device that had survived the crash. Veltar took the device and activated it. The screen showed the last moments before the crash. She watched her people die as the ship broke apart. Then the recording stopped. But there was more. Security cameras had kept recording even after the crash. Veltar fast-forwarded through hours of empty footage until she saw movement. Human soldiers entered the wreckage. She counted 4 of them, moving carefully through the debris. They looked like the savage killers she had been taught to expect. Then she saw something that made her heart stop beating. One of the humans, a male with sergeant markings, had found Kessela. Veltar watched as he knelt next to her trapped child. She expected to see him raise his weapon or call for backup. Instead, he carefully freed Kessela from the debris. He opened a medical kit and began treating her wounds with gentle hands. The human soldier's face showed no anger or hatred, only concern for a hurt child. Veltar watched in amazement as the human carried her offspring to an escape pod. He activated the life support and set the distress beacon. Then he looked down at Kessela through the glass, and Veltar saw something impossible in his alien features. Compassion. The human had risked his own life to save an enemy child. He had used his own medical supplies. He had made sure Kessela would be found by rescue teams. "Matriarch, what are your orders?" asked Zethol. Veltar turned off the recording device. Her mind was racing with questions. Everything she had learned about humans said they were incapable of such kindness. They were supposed to be ruthless killers who showed no mercy. "I want all information about this human patrol," she said. "Unit numbers, personnel files, everything." "Yes, Matriarch." "But why?" Veltar looked at the wreckage around her. Somewhere out there was a human soldier who had saved her child's life. She needed to understand why. "I want to know who he is." Over the next several days, Veltar threw herself into research with an intensity that surprised her staff. She studied human military records that had been captured in previous battles. She learned about their unit structures and identification systems. The human who saved Kessela wore the uniform of the Earth Defense Corps. His rank markings identified him as a sergeant. Security footage from other battles helped her narrow down which units had been operating in that sector. But learning about human military organization led to something unexpected. Veltar began reading about human culture and psychology. She discovered that humans formed emotional bonds with their offspring, just like Zephyrians did. They had concepts of honor and mercy that were similar to her own people's beliefs. "Matriarch, you have been spending much time studying the enemy," observed her aide, Kilmeth. "The other commanders are beginning to ask questions." Veltar was reading a captured human document about something called the Geneva Convention. It described rules for treating prisoners and protecting civilians during war. "Did you know that humans have laws about protecting children in combat zones?" she asked. "It is probably propaganda," Kilmeth replied. "Humans do not follow such rules. But what if they do?" Veltar set down the document. "What if we have been wrong about them?" Kilmeth's antenna twitched with confusion. "Matriarch, they are the enemy. They attack our colonies. They kill our people. And we attack their colonies. We kill their people." Veltar stood and walked to the window. Outside she could see Zephyrian ships preparing for another raid on human territory. "But one of them saved my child when he could have let her die." That night Veltar visited Kessela in the nursery. Her offspring was fully healed now, and playing with other larvae. When she saw her mother, Kessela made happy chirping sounds and reached up with all four arms. Veltar picked up her child and held her close. Kessela was alive because of a human soldier's kindness. A man who was supposed to be her enemy had shown more compassion than many of her own people would have. "The strange being helped me," Kessela said in the simple words that larvae used. "He was gentle. Not scary. What did he look like?" Veltar asked. "Different. Only 2 arms. Small eyes, but kind eyes." Veltar made a decision that would change her life. She was going to find this human. She needed to understand why he had saved Kessela. She needed to know if there were others like him. Most importantly, she needed to thank him. But first she had to learn everything she could about human behavior and language. If she was going to meet this soldier, she wanted to be able to communicate with him. The hunt had begun. Marcus stared at the ceiling of his small quarters, unable to sleep. It had been 2 weeks since the incident at the crash site, and he could not stop thinking about the alien child. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those large, innocent eyes looking up at him. The door to his room buzzed. "Come in," he called. Corporal Vega entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She sat down on the chair next to his bed and handed him one of the cups. "Still having nightmares?" she asked. "Not nightmares exactly," Marcus said. He sat up and took a sip of the hot coffee. "I keep wondering if I did the right thing. You saved a child's life." "Of course you did the right thing." Marcus shook his head. "Command doesn't see it that way. Captain Rodriguez called me into his office yesterday. They're talking about a court-martial. Vega cursed under her breath. For what? Following your conscience? For aiding the enemy during wartime? For disobeying direct orders about handling enemy personnel? Marcus set down his coffee cup. They have the security footage from the crash site. They know exactly what I did. The regulations were clear. Any contact with enemy forces was supposed to be reported immediately. Soldiers were not allowed to provide aid or comfort to enemy personnel without direct orders from a superior officer. Half the unit thinks you're a traitor, Vega said quietly. The other half thinks you're a hero. It's tearing everyone apart. Marcus had noticed the way other soldiers looked at him now, some with respect, others with suspicion. Private Torres had stopped talking to him completely. Sergeant Williams had requested a transfer to another unit. Maybe they're right, Marcus said. Maybe I am a traitor. Don't say that. Vega leaned forward. You saw a hurt child and you helped. That's what humans do. That's what makes us different from them. But Marcus was not so sure anymore. The alien child had seemed so helpless, so innocent. It had looked at him with trust, not fear. For a moment it had felt like holding his niece back home. I keep thinking about its eyes, Marcus said. They were so human. 3,000 miles away in a Zephyrian command ship, Veltar was having her own sleepless night. She sat in her private study, surrounded by human documents and recordings. On her desk was a photograph that had been taken from a captured human outpost. It showed human soldiers with their families, mothers and fathers holding small children. The resemblance to Zephyrian family structures was striking. Computer Play Language Lesson 7, she said in her native tongue. A holographic human appeared in front of her desk. It was a recording from a captured educational program, designed to teach human language to children. Hello? The hologram said in simple English. My name is Sarah. What is your name? My name is Veltar, she repeated slowly. Her mouth was not designed for human sounds, but she was learning. She had been studying human language for weeks now, using captured educational materials and military communications. It was a difficult process. Human speech required different tongue movements than Zephyrian communication, but she was making progress. She could now understand basic human words and phrases. More importantly, she was beginning to understand human emotions and motivations. Computer, show me file designation. Chen, Marcus, Sergeant. A new hologram appeared. It was a complete military record of the human who had saved Casilla. She had finally identified him through careful analysis of unit rosters and combat footage. Sergeant Marcus Chen, age 28, born on Earth, served 3 tours of duty in the war zone. No disciplinary actions until the incident at the crash site. Family members included parents and one sister with a young daughter. Veltar studied the human's photograph. He had dark hair and serious eyes. His face showed the kind of determination she recognized in veteran warriors. But there was something else there too. A gentleness that contradicted everything she had been taught about human soldiers. Computer, show me all available footage of Sergeant Chen in combat situations. She watched recordings from security cameras and helmet cams. She saw Marcus Chen fighting her people with skill and courage. But she also saw him helping wounded soldiers, both human and alien prisoners. She saw him risk his life to protect civilians during an evacuation. This was not the behavior of a mindless killer. This was a warrior who followed a code of honor. Matriarch, forgive the interruption, came a voice from her doorway. Veltar looked up to see Commander Hextar, her second in command. The older Zephyrian looked concerned. The High Council is asking questions about your recent research activities, Hextar said. They want to know why you are spending so much time studying human culture. I am trying to understand our enemy, Veltar replied. Knowledge of their behavior patterns could give us a tactical advantage. Some of the council members believe you are becoming too interested in human affairs. They worry it might affect your judgment. Veltar turned off the holographic display. She knew her obsession with finding Marcus Chen was becoming obvious to others, but she could not help herself. She needed to understand why he had saved Casilla. Have you ever wondered if we might be wrong about humans? She asked. Hextar's antenna twitched with surprise. Wrong in what way? We call them savage killers. But I have seen evidence of compassion, honor, and mercy in their behavior. What if they are not so different from us? They destroyed the colony on Vex Prime. They killed thousands of our people. And we destroyed their colony on New Geneva. We killed thousands of their people. Veltar stood and walked to her window. Perhaps we are both savage killers. Or perhaps we are both capable of something better. Hextar was quiet for a long moment. What are you planning, matriarch? Veltar made a decision that she knew was dangerous. I am going to find the human who saved my child. I am going to thank him. That is impossible. He is deep in human territory. Even if you could reach him, he would probably kill you on sight. Maybe, Veltar said. But I have to try. I need to know if there is hope for peace between our peoples. Back in his quarters, Marcus was reading a message from his sister. She had sent new photos of his niece, a little girl named Emma, who had just turned 2 years old. In the pictures, Emma was playing with toys and laughing. She had the same innocent expression that Marcus had seen in the alien child's eyes. She's getting so big, Vega said, looking over his shoulder at the photos. She looks just like you. I wonder if that alien child has family too, Marcus said quietly. I wonder if someone is missing it the way I would miss Emma. Marcus, you need to stop thinking about this. What's done is done. But Marcus could not stop thinking about it. He had crossed a line that day in the valley. He had chosen to see an enemy as a person instead of a target. And now he was beginning to wonder if there were others on both sides who felt the same way. He looked at the photos of his niece again. Emma was the future of humanity. She deserved to grow up in a world without endless war. Maybe it was time for someone to take the first step toward peace, even if that someone was just a disgraced sergeant who had saved an enemy child. The court-martial was a disaster. Marcus stood at attention in the military courtroom as Colonel Hayes read the charges. Sergeant Marcus Chen, you are accused of providing aid and comfort to enemy forces during wartime, violation of standing orders regarding enemy contact, and conduct unbecoming of a soldier. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage showed everything. Marcus providing medical aid to the alien child, Marcus placing it in the escape pod, Marcus activating the rescue beacon. How do you plead? Colonel Hayes asked. Guilty, sir, Marcus said without hesitation. A murmur went through the courtroom. His defense lawyer had advised him to plead not guilty and claim temporary insanity. But Marcus refused to lie about what he had done. Sergeant Chen, the colonel continued, you understand that providing aid to enemy forces is considered treason in wartime? Yes, sir. Then explain to this court why you chose to help an enemy combatant. Marcus looked directly at the colonel. It wasn't a combatant, sir. It was a child, a baby, and I took an oath to protect the innocent. That oath applies to human civilians, Sergeant, not to alien enemies. With respect, sir, I believe it applies to all innocent life. The courtroom was silent. Marcus could see reporters writing down his words. This trial was being broadcast across the human colonies. His actions had become a symbol of something bigger than himself. The court finds you guilty as charged, Colonel Hayes announced 3 hours later. However, considering your previous exemplary service record, this court sentences you to reduction in rank to private and reassignment to Communications Monitoring Station Delta 7. It was a remote listening post on the edge of human space. Exile, basically. Marcus accepted the sentence with relief. He had expected execution or life in prison. As he left the courtroom, Vega caught up with him. I'm sorry, Marcus. This isn't right. It's fair, Marcus said. I broke the rules. I knew there would be consequences. Will you be okay out there? Delta 7 is a one-man station. Marcus nodded. Maybe some time alone will help me figure things out. Communications Monitoring Station Delta 7 was a small outpost built into an asteroid. Marcus arrived 3 days later to find a cramped living space, basic life support, and banks of listening equipment designed to intercept enemy communications. His job was simple: monitor Zephyrian radio traffic and report anything important to command. It was boring work, but it gave him time to think. For 2 months, Marcus listened to alien voices speaking in their clicking, musical language. He began to recognize patterns and recurring phrases. Some transmissions seemed to be military orders. Others sounded more personal, like family members talking to each other. Then he heard something that made him sit up straight. A Zephyrian voice was speaking broken English. The words were hard to understand, but Marcus could make out fragments. Human soldier, saved small one, looking for... Marcus adjusted the equipment and tried to clean up the signal. The transmission was coming from deep inside Zephyrian space, but it was broadcasting on multiple frequencies as if the sender wanted someone to hear it. This is High Matriarch Veltar, of the Zephyrian Empire, the voice said slowly in heavily accented English. I am looking for the human who saved my offspring at crash site designation Helix 7. I wish to speak with this person. Marcus felt his blood turn cold. Someone was looking for him. Not just someone, a high matriarch, which was one of the highest ranks in the Zephyrian military hierarchy. The transmission continued. Human soldier showed mercy to innocent child. This action has great meaning. I study your language to communicate. I wish to understand why you helped. Marcus recorded the message and played it back several times. There was something in the alien voice that surprised him. Not anger or hatred, but curiosity, maybe even gratitude. Over the next few weeks, the transmissions continued. The Zephyrian called Veltar was broadcasting the same message in different human languages, trying to reach him. She had learned Spanish, French, and even some Mandarin. Marcus found himself waiting for these broadcasts. He began to understand that this was not a trap or a threat. This was a mother looking for the person who had saved her child's life. He started researching Zephyrian military structure in the communications database. High Matriarch Veltar was a famous warrior, responsible for several major victories against human forces. But she was also known for following strict codes of honor in battle. Then everything changed. Marcus was monitoring routine traffic when he picked up an urgent military transmission. A major human offensive was being planned against a Zephyrian position. Nothing unusual about that, except for the target coordinates. The attack was aimed at a Zephyrian facility that intelligence reports described as a military installation. But as Marcus cross-referenced the coordinates, with Zephyrian communications he had been monitoring, he realized the truth. It was not a military base. It was a nursery, a place where Zephyrian children were raised and educated. Marcus stared at the intelligence report in horror. Command was planning to attack a school full of alien children, the same kind of innocent life he had tried to protect in that crashed transport. He tried to contact his superiors, but his communications were restricted due to his court-martial. As a disgraced private at a remote listening post, he had no authority to challenge mission orders, but he did have access to the Zephyrian communication frequencies. Marcus sat at his console for hours, trying to decide what to do. Warning the enemy about a military operation was the ultimate act of treason, but allowing children to die was something he could not live with. Finally, he activated the transmission array and began broadcasting on the same frequency that Veltar had been using. "This is the human soldier you're looking for," he said into the microphone. "I saved your child at the crash site. My name is Marcus Chen." He paused, knowing that his words were probably being recorded by both sides. "There is something you need to know. Your children at coordinates 127.4 by 85.7 are in danger. Human forces are planning an attack. You need to evacuate them now." Marcus sent the coordinates and timing information for the planned assault. Then he destroyed his transmission records and sat back to wait for the consequences. 3 hours later, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Marcus looked at his sensors and saw something that made his heart race. A small Zephyrian ship was approaching the asteroid. It was broadcasting on an open frequency. "Marcus Chen, this is Veltar. I wish to speak with you. I come alone and unarmed." Marcus stared at the display screen. The alien ship was elegant and beautiful, made of the same crystal material as all Zephyrian technology. But it was tiny, built for only one person. She had come to find him. The mother of the child he had saved was here, just outside his station. Marcus made another decision that would change his life forever. He opened the docking bay doors. Marcus stood in the docking bay, his heart pounding as the alien ship landed. The crystal vessel was beautiful up close, its surface reflecting the station's lights like a jewel. Steam hissed as the docking system sealed together. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a section of the crystal hull became transparent and slid open. A figure stepped out, and Marcus got his first close look at a living Zephyrian. Veltar was tall and elegant, her green metallic skin catching the light. She moved with the grace of a trained warrior, but her 4 hands were empty of weapons. Her large compound eyes fixed on Marcus, and he saw intelligence there, not the mindless aggression he had expected. "You are Marcus Chen," she said in careful English. Her voice was musical like wind chimes. "Yes," Marcus replied. He fought every instinct that told him to reach for his weapon. "You are Veltar," she nodded slowly. "Thank you for warning about attack on nursery. Children are safe now." They stood facing each other in silence. Marcus realized he was looking at one of humanity's most feared enemies. This alien had probably killed many human soldiers, but right now she just seemed like a mother who wanted to talk to the person who had saved her child. "I came to ask you something," Veltar continued. "Why did you help my offspring?" "We are enemies in war." Marcus thought about the question. It was the same one he had been asking himself for months. "Because she was just a baby," he said finally. "I have a niece about the same age. When I saw your child hurt and scared, I couldn't walk away." Veltar tilted her head, trying to understand. "Your niece? This is family member?" "My sister's daughter. She's 2 years old." Marcus pulled out his communicator and showed Veltar photos of Emma. "This is her." Veltar looked at the pictures with interest. Her antenna twitched as she studied the images of the human child. "She is beautiful," Veltar said. "Kessela is my youngest offspring." She asked about the kind human who helped her. "Kessela? My daughter. The child you saved." Veltar activated a device of her own and showed Marcus a holographic image. A young Zephyrian larva played in what looked like a garden, her bioluminescent patches glowing happily. Marcus smiled despite himself. The alien child looked healthy and content. "She's grown a lot. Yes, she speaks now. She remembers you. She says you had gentle hands and kind eyes." They moved to the station's small common area. Marcus made coffee for himself and found some water for Veltar. They sat across from each other at the metal table, two soldiers from opposite sides of a war. "I studied your people," Veltar said. "I learned your language, your customs. I wanted to understand why you saved Kessela. What did you learn? That we are not so different. You love your children as we love ours. You fight to protect your families. You have honor and compassion." Marcus nodded. "I've been listening to your people's communications for months. I hear parents talking to their children, soldiers missing their homes. You're not the monsters we thought you were. Nor are you the savage killers we believed," Veltar replied. "But our governments tell us to hate each other. They say peace is impossible." "Maybe they're wrong," Marcus said quietly. They talked for hours. Veltar told him about Zephyrian culture, their art and music and philosophy. Marcus shared stories about human history, about humanity's long struggle toward understanding and cooperation. "On my world, we fought many wars before we learned to live in peace," Marcus explained. "Different nations, different races, different beliefs. But eventually we realized that we were all just people trying to take care of our families." "The High Council would call such talk treason," Veltar said. "So would my commanders. But that doesn't make it wrong." Their conversation was interrupted by alarms. Marcus checked his monitors and saw multiple ships approaching the station. "Both human and Zephyrian vessels moving fast. They found us," Marcus said. Veltar stood up, her warrior instincts taking over. "I should go. Your people will think you are collaborating with the enemy." "They already think that. I warned you about the attack on the nursery, remember?" Through the station's windows they could see the approaching fleets. Human destroyers and Zephyrian cruisers were converging on their position, weapons powered but not yet firing. "This is Admiral Morrison of the Human Defense Fleet," came a voice over the communication system. "Private Chen, you are under arrest for treason. Surrender the enemy agent immediately." A different voice followed, speaking in the Zephyrian language. Veltar translated. "High Command orders me to return for questioning about my unauthorized contact with humans." Marcus looked at Veltar. "What do we do?" She was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she activated her own communication device. "Admiral Morrison, this is High Matriarch Veltar. I request permission to broadcast a message to both fleets." There was silence from both sides. Then Admiral Morrison's voice came back. "You have 2 minutes." Veltar moved to the communication console. Marcus helped her adjust the settings to broadcast to both human and Zephyrian frequencies. "Warriors of both fleets," she began, speaking in English and then repeating in her own language. "I am here because a human soldier saved my child's life. This human, Marcus Chen, chose compassion over hatred. He chose to see my offspring as an innocent life worthy of protection." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Today, this same human warned us of an attack on our nursery world. Because of his warning, 3,000 Zephyrian children are alive. He risked everything to protect innocence, even though we are supposed to be enemies." Marcus stepped forward. "I want to say something too." He took the microphone and spoke to both fleets. "For 3 years we've been killing each other. Human children have died. Zephyrian children have died. But today I met someone who could have been my friend in another life. Someone who loves her family the way I love mine. His voice grew stronger as he continued. High Matriarch Veltar came here alone and unarmed to thank me for saving her child. She risked her life to understand why a human would show mercy to a Zephyrian. That takes more courage than any battle. Veltar took the microphone back. We propose a ceasefire, not surrender but a chance to talk, to see if there is another way besides endless war. For long minutes there was silence from both fleets. Then Admiral Morrison's voice came over the communication system. Private Chen, you're still under arrest, but we're willing to discuss terms for a temporary ceasefire. The Zephyrian commander responded similarly. High Matriarch, you will face questioning, but the High Council agrees to consider peace talks. 6 months later, Marcus stood in a conference room on the neutral station where peace negotiations were taking place. He wore the uniform of a special diplomatic liaison, a position created specifically for him. Veltar sat across the table in her role as Zephyrian peace ambassador. Between them lay the framework for a permanent ceasefire and the beginning of cultural exchange programs. The children's exchange program is working well, Veltar reported. Human and Zephyrian youth are learning about each other's cultures. Kessela starts her human language lessons next week, Marcus said. And Emma is fascinated by the Zephyrian art programs we showed her. They had both paid a price for their actions. Marcus would never be fully trusted by some humans, and Veltar faced constant opposition from hardline Zephyrians, but public opinion was slowly changing. The story of the human soldier who saved an enemy child had spread throughout both civilizations. It had become a symbol of hope for people tired of war. There's something I want to show you, Veltar said. She activated a holographic display that showed 2 children playing together. One was Kessela, now older and brighter. The other was a human girl about the same age. Kessela made a friend at the cultural center, Veltar explained. Her name is Sarah. They don't speak the same language yet, but they play games and share toys. Marcus smiled. Maybe that's where real peace starts, with children who see friends instead of enemies. The adults could learn from them, Veltar agreed. As they watched the hologram of their children playing together, Marcus thought about the decision he had made in that crashed transport. He had chosen to save one life, and that choice had changed everything. Sometimes the most important battles were won not with weapons, but with compassion. Sometimes the greatest victory was simply seeing the person behind the enemy's face. And sometimes, one act of kindness could change the course of history.